When China landed the first manned spaceship on Mars, humanity was immediately contacted by aliens. Formerly concealed by dark matter, it turned out that space was filled with intelligent life that had been eagerly waiting to meet us. First contact was initiated through radio and television and was in all languages. The announcement stated that now that we were an interplanetary species, we had earned the right to be contacted by the multitude of alien species observing humanity for thousands of years. They said they were so happy to watch us progress to this point, and they were thrilled to welcome us into the larger community of intelligent life. Over the next few years, Earth was besieged by tourists from space. There was a hallucinatory parade of figures of all shapes and sizes, ranging from microscopic to towering. They came bearing gifts, technology, and medical breakthroughs, and seemed only to want one thing: to talk to humanity, any human, about any and every aspect of our lives. Initially fearful and skeptical, our predominant feelings towards the visitors gradually gave way to bemused flattery. While we were interested in their cultures, biology, and technology, they seemed interested in us as individuals. Repeatedly, we were told how special and unique we were, and how long they had waited to meet us. When the first visiting centers where humans and aliens could meet were opened, I volunteered to be a liaison. I served as a tour guide and intermediary between the visiting humans and the visitors beyond the stars. Over my time working there, I even got to know some of the aliens personally. One, a creature who charmingly referred to himself as Jumbo, took a personal interest in me and my life. Jumbo looked like a 3-foot-tall, fuzzy octopus with nearly comically enlarged eye gear and a breathing apparatus. Despite his odd appearance, the two of us became close friends over time, perhaps best friends. He seemed to love and appreciate me unconditionally and was anxious to help me in any way he could. For example, when learning of a rare medical condition my family was genetically prone to, he provided me with a cure that I passed along to my doctor to share with the larger medical community. These sorts of information transfers were common. The aliens were eager to assist us in any way possible, with one glaring exception. They offered us no advice on spacefaring technology. They said that was the responsibility of every species to develop on their own. Over time, this became a bone of contention. A segment of society grew angry that while aliens were more than happy to visit Earth, they refused to open up the larger universe to us. The anger grew and predictably exploded into violence. The visiting center was bombed and partially destroyed. I wasn't scheduled to work that day, but received the news of the attack in an urgent message. Jumbo was badly hurt, didn't have long to live, and he desperately wanted to see me one last time. I rushed to the visiting center. When I arrived, Jumbo was in a terrible condition. He had severely burned, half of his limbs had been crushed, and his eye gear had been smashed, nearly blinding him. I sat beside his medical bed, crying, and holding one of his tentacles. The texture was like a warm peach, and I could feel it trembling. He was still able to communicate, though. Through the translation device, his voice quivered and squealed with feedback. It was a sound I knew denoted strong emotion. He told me the aliens understood and that they weren't angry at all. They wouldn't hold humanity accountable for the actions of a few angry members of our species. They had been watching us a long time and weren't surprised this happened. In fact, Jumbo said that he'd even return personally in another body. This was one of the first references I, or anyone from Earth as far as I knew, had heard about the aliens' beliefs about the afterlife, if that's what he was describing. It was a subject they usually seemed uncomfortable talking about. Is this body an avatar of some kind? I asked. If so, what does your real body look like, and where are you? Jumble's translator made a slight squeal and a popping noise, sounds I attributed to denoting both sadness and amusement. No, this was the body I was born into, but my essence, my personality, will be reborn on my home planet. This will happen to all of the alien visitors destroyed today. It's happened thousands of times in the past. It'll just take a while for me to return to Earth, and I'll never see you again. I have grown to care about you, and I am deeply distressed by that. The statement ended with a prolonged low squeal that denoted immense grief. I struggled to understand what he was saying. Jumbo seemed to be implying that not only would he be reincarnated, but he'd remember his previous life and eventually return to Earth. Jumbo, you're saying that you have proof of the afterlife? I said, my voice shaking. That's amazing news. That means we can see each other again. Just find me, my reincarnation, and remind me of our friendship. Jumbo's tentacle squeezed my hand tightly. Through the sound of the apparatus, I could hear his breathing start to hitch and fade. Finally, with the last of his strength, this is what he said, his words accompanied by a low squeal from the translation device. Humans don't survive death and aren't reborn. You're the only intelligent species that doesn't. That's why you're all so fascinating to us. Each of you is so unique and special. You live once for a short period of time and never return. That's why I am so sad, my friend. I will miss you. The shadow came first. It crawled across the plains of Colorado, devouring the horizon. The shadow swallowed the fields under an unnatural alien dusk, leaving the air heavy and electric. It wasn't a storm cloud, nor the silhouette of some experimental aircraft. No, this was something altogether new, something titanic and incomprehensible. When it descended, it did so without a sound, as though gravity itself had bent to its will. The sphere was unlike anything Earth had ever known, a flawless expanse of obsidian, smooth as liquid glass and cold as the vacuum of space. Scientists scrambled to describe it. Was it metal, a fluid, or something else entirely beyond the periodic table? Hundreds more followed and landed across the globe. Even our most advanced radar and electromagnetic sensors were baffled. The ships simply were, their presence a quiet defiance of all known laws. And then they just sat there. For weeks, we waited. The military encircled the area, the media buzzed with theories, and the public speculated wildly. Teams of scientists approached the sphere with caution, testing its surface with probes and lasers, all to no avail. It gave us nothing. No signals, no movement, no answers. By the time October arrived, the world had grown bored. People moved on to other stories. The once crowded perimeter was now a line of inattentive guards and weary researchers. That's when the knocking began. It was faint at first, a dull, unrhythmic tapping, akin almost to Morse code. It grew louder, sharper, more insistent. By the time the microphones picked it up, the pattern had been analyzed and reanalyzed by the world's top minds. It wasn't random, it was a message, though we couldn't decipher its meaning. And then, without warning, the ships opened simultaneously around the planet. The ramp extended with precision, a smoothness that suggested not just advanced technology, but an intelligence far beyond our own. From the blackness within emerged them. They weren't monsters. No, they were adorable. Small, bear-like creatures with shimmering fur that refracted sunlight into dazzling rainbows. If you stared too long, the colors seemed to twist, as though the spectrum itself rebelled against them. They waddled awkwardly, their giant, soulful eyes scanning the crowd with a look that seemed to radiate pure, unadulterated affection. The lead xenobiologist on the site was the first to approach. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice trembling with wonder, "this is a childlike species, evolved for affection and love." The world immediately fell under their spell. Within weeks, memes became fixtures in homes everywhere. Though mute, they seemed to instinctively understand human emotions, mirroring gestures and facial expressions in ways that dissolve barriers of language and culture. But it was their obsession with the children that captivated humanity. Parents described the memes as guardians, their tireless devotion to children a marvel. Birth rates, which had been declining for decades, soared across the planet. Families expanded, eager to see their mem interact with their own child. Even skeptics like me found ourselves caught up in the fever. Our son, Oliver, was born just before the memes arrived. When we brought waffles into our home, I'll admit, I was enchanted. I say he, although as far as anyone could tell, the memes were sexless creatures devoted on Oliver. His whiskers twitched and wiggled as he watched over the boy both day and night. But there were moments. Sometimes I'd catch Waffle staring at Oliver, his gaze unblinking. Once, I woke in the dead of night to find him standing in the nursery, his fur shimmering faintly in the moonlight. His whiskers trembled as though he was listening to something just out of reach. There were whispers, too. A farmer in Nebraska claimed he saw several memes standing in his field under the moonlight, unmoving, their gaze fixed on his house. Others reported strange tracks near the children's bedrooms, claw-like impressions that didn't match any known animal. I dismissed it. We all did. Then the disappearances began. At first, it was pets, dogs, cats, birds, even livestock. Authorities blamed predators, but I never felt sufficient. Then, the children began to vanish. Entire towns reported missing infants, their cribs left empty without signs of struggle. I tried to rationalize it. Waffles adored Oliver. He'd been Oliver's constant companion for 2 years. He'd never hurt him. That's what I told myself, even as unease coiled in my gut. The breaking point came one night in early winter. I woke to Oliver's cries, sharp and panicked. My wife and I rushed to his room, but the bed was empty. Waffle stood by the open window, his whiskers trembling violently. "Where is he?" I shouted, lunging at the mem. My hand caught in his shimmering fur and recoiled as it slouched off like wet paper. Beneath was something grotesque, a mass of insectile limbs and gelatinous flesh that writhed in the moonlight. A stench like rotting fruit filled the room, and a wet clicking sound emanated from the thing that had worn Waffle's skin. My wife screamed as the creature turned its hollow black sockets towards me. Then it leapt out the window, clutching Oliver in his spindly arms. I chased the thing we called Waffles outside, barefoot and frantic, into the night. They were all there, hundreds of MIMs, converging on the ship. In their arms, they carried children. The sphere's ramp had reopened, a gaping maw that swallowed them one by one. Soldiers fired their weapons, but the MIMs were impervious. Bullets slowed and warped to midair, bending as though space itself protected them. The children's cries grew fainter as the last MIM disappeared into the ship's blackness. Then the ships were gone. Governments denied everything. Officials claimed the MIMs had departed peacefully, taking nothing with them. But those of us who had lost children knew the truth. They weren't pets. They weren't friends. They were harvesters. And our children were their crop. When the aliens arrived, there was uproar, panic, mass buying of toilet paper, and generally everything else you'd expect. When the world leaders explained the aliens had already figured out communication and came in peace, that settled things somewhat, though of course there were a significant amount of the population that remained suspicious. But when the aliens explained their offer of exchanging of technology for plastics they could consume as food, that was a whole new ballgame. Cameras, mostly on drones and mini-subs, followed the aliens and their equipment as they tackled ocean pollution first. Then across the world, an unprecedented series of recycling programs were created, households getting cash and credit for any plastics they put out to the curb. Businesses hired on tons of new people to help manage the plastic waste that came out of the manufacturing processes they used. The tech we got was awesome, giving us the knowledge to halt global warming, to develop astonishing new scientific discoveries, but most of that was beyond me. I'm just a teenager, looking at this through my computer screen in Podunk, Montana. Maybe it was looking at it from the outside, feeling like it wasn't happening to me, that made it easier for me to absorb what happened next, without being overcome with emotion, that is. The aliens had colonized Venus, creating massive structures beyond anything humans could dream of, and my dad would show me the planet through his telescope. I was unable to see the details of the planet, much less any of their buildings or machines, but it made me feel connected to them, made me feel grateful to live in such a wondrous time. With our planet prospering sustainably in a way it hadn't for hundreds of years, the political campaigns became about who would do the most to propel us forward into the universe, how we would take our place among the stars, from the distant solar systems these aliens had come from. With that potential, we felt on cloud 9, living in a future with a promise of infinity at our feet. It was not to be, of course. Some of the people of Earth cautioned against trust of a species we didn't know, couldn't know, not truly and deeply as allies we had on our own planet. And once we started running out of plastics, even with the production of more and more, knowing we had the resources to mend anything broken in our planet, it was an unsustainable balance. Perhaps the world leaders assumed everything would proceed at the right place and happen in the right time, that things would sort themselves out, as they always had in history, with even a change as large as the one we were living through. But then, the aliens informed us that they would be taking ownership of Earth. They didn't declare war, they didn't negotiate, they simply stated a fact. We learned of that days later. A secret that large was not able to be kept for long. leading to an explosion of protests in the streets unlike anything we'd ever experienced. The aliens weren't going to commit genocide against humans or shove us into slavery for their kind. Nothing so crude. They had come to Earth for a reason, which was that it was almost identical atmosphere to their home planet. Close enough at least that they could literally breathe our air. And of course, we'd done an excellent job cleaning it up and improving the quality of life. So they came, integrating themselves wherever they saw fit, building over vast spans of lands that human hadn't yet spread to, whether for reasons of heat or cold or predators or any other. We had new neighbors, unable to dissuade them from moving in any more than we could someone who had bought the house next door. The conspiracy theorists raised their anger over the airways, furious that they cautioned the urge had been taken seriously. First, our planet's empty plains and deserts and forests. Then, that would not be enough, they told us. We were on the brink of extinction and we were sleepwalking through it, they said, and we needed to fight back. Some did. They all died. This is the world I live in now. Balanced on a knife's edge, paranoid and fearful of the future, of the creatures that now inhabit our world. They live among us, as if they've always been here, as if they belong, friendly and kind and helpful, but immovable as a redwood tree planted in the ground so long ago. It is surreal and exhausting to keep up with the news these days, so I've mostly stopped trying. I'm 16 now, unsure of where I'll take my place in the world, but more than that, wary of what Earth will be when I reach adulthood. How will I find my way among the new citizens of this planet? How we'll survive, whether we'll thrive or butt heads, how our leaders will proceed, and what it will be like in a month, a year, a decade from now. Most of all, I wonder if the coming war, because it is thick and heavy in the air, undeniable. Humanity wants its planet back from the invaders, and there are already whispers of